Hello, everyone. We really hope you enjoyed the first ever showing of the School of Hope documentary. We would love to hear your thoughts, so do pop them down in the chat box or find us on social media. Yeah, we very much hope you enjoyed. So my name is Katie Webster and I am producer of the Paperbirds Theatre Company. I am a white woman in her mid-20s. I have red hair and I'm wearing kind of a spotty dress. Got lots of plants behind me with a little picture frame as well. And my pronouns are she, her. And I am thrilled to be chairing the second part of today's event, the impact findings. Now, before I get started, very excitingly, I'd like to let you know that we have a brilliant illustrator called Julia Miranda, who's joining us today to take visual minutes of this section. So Julia, I believe, is live on Instagram now. So give us a wave, Julia. Hi, Julia, nice to see you. So Julia is on the Paperbirds Instagram right now. So if you have another device, maybe your phone nearby, or you can get technical and open another tab, you can have a look at what Julia is drawing as we go through the impact findings of the School of Hope. And you can find us at the Paperbirds on Instagram. So on to the impact findings. We partnered with 3 different academics from different institutions for the School of Hope. So we partnered with Katrina Brown, who is Emeritus Professor at the University of Exeter, John Lammy, who is Associate Professor of Psychology at Anglia Ruskin University, and Laura K. Taylor, who is Assistant Professor in the School of Psychology at the University College Dublin and Reader at Queen's University Belfast. So here at the Paperbirds, as a company, we usually take on big social or political issues, but measuring this true impact across the project can be challenging. But when we were planning the School of Hope, we found that it had been proven that empathy is made, not born. So 10%, only 10% of empathy is linked to your genetics, and 90% is linked to learned behaviour, so the things that we develop as we grow up. And that shows that it is possible to teach and grow empathy. So for us at the Paperbirds, we thought that's something that we could aim for, that maybe even we could measure in the School of Hope. And we did this through quantitative and qualitative methods. So numbers and data, but then also verbal feedback. And it's on that note that I would now love to hand over to our first presenter, who is Deirdre Moran. Deirdre has just completed her Master's in Psychological Science at the University College Dublin. And over the past year, Deirdre has also worked as a research assistant with Laura, who was one of our lead academics on the project. And Deirdre specialises in exploring what influences pro-social behaviour has on children and young people. So Deirdre is now going to share with us the process and the results of the quantitative findings, so the numerical data. Over to you, Deirdre.
Hi, thanks for the introduction, Katie. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all. So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Deirdre and I am a white 30-year-old woman. I have long blonde hair. I'm wearing a black top and I'm sitting in front of a bookcase full of books. So I'm delighted to be here to present the quantitative findings. So just a quick recap of who we are. So as Katie mentioned, I've been a research assistant with Laura for the past year, working out of UCD. And Laura's particular focus is on risk and resilience factors among children and families who grow up in settings of conflict, and how things or behaviours such as empathy, such as pro-social behaviour, can be used to promote more intergroup cooperation and collaboration, and ultimately to promote more peace in these areas. Sorry. So a little bit funny. So sorry, to go back here. So what we looked at, obviously based on your understanding of the School of Hope, there were 4 key areas that we wanted to look at. First one, of course, was empathy. And I'm sure you're all really familiar with this topic. And as we said, there's quite a personal element to what that is. But in psychological research, it's more or less defined as understanding or sensing the emotions of another person. The second thing we looked at was pro-social behaviour. So that's defined as a behaviour that helps someone else. So it can be sharing, giving something to another person, or helping in some way. The third area that we looked at was civic participation. So that you can kind of view as helping on a broader scale. So it's kind of political engagement. It can be behaviours such as your voting practices, protesting, to engaging in boycotts or signing petitions for something you believe in. And the final thing then is mental well-being, which kind of does what it says in the tin. It's sort of a measure of your emotional well-being. So what we did, so first of all, to say that none of this will be possible without, all of you taking part in engaging in the process and helping us to gather this data. So thank you so much for that. So as you all know, we shared questionnaires for you all to fill out online. And these are validated scales that are used quite a lot in psychological research. That are used in psychological research to measure these things. So they've been used in quite a lot of different research studies previously. So what we did was we gave you the questionnaires to fill out before taking part in the School of Hope and afterwards. And what we did then was we measured if there was a difference in time 1 from doing these scales, and then time 2 after finishing the School of Hope. So we had 3 key findings. Sorry, it's just blocked a bit. So I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of a technical issue there. But we had 3 key findings that we want to share with you today. So first of all, really excitingly, we found that there were increases in both empathy and in pro-social behaviour after you all took part in the School of Hope, which is really encouraging. And just to say that in scientific research, we often need much larger samples of people to measure this kind of change. So it's really encouraging on the impact that the School of Hope has had on both empathy and pro-social behaviour, that is, helping others. So that's to say that then the civic participation scores and the mental well-being scores didn't increase. But when we kind of explore why that might be, there's interesting things in discussing that I think are relevant and interesting to explore. So as I said, civic participation, it's behaviours that, they're protesting or signing petitions, and they're just behaviours that, given the time scale that you may have taken part in the School of Hope, you might have had an opportunity to actually engage in them. So these are behaviours that you yourselves might view as a more long-term outcome. You might reflect on this in kind of the months or years to come as something that may be impacted. Because we did see a trend towards improvement, but it didn't quite reach the level with which we can say that it's a significant difference between pre-School of Hope and post-School of Hope. But the signs are very encouraging all the same. And then thirdly, as I said, mental well-being scores didn't increase. But I think when we reflect on what the aim of the School of Hope really is, as we saw from the amazing movie just there. It's kind of about understanding, connecting with other people. So when we reflect, so mental well-being, you could view as a measure of sort of your own positive emotions, things like self-esteem affect it, confidence, they affect your own personal sense of well-being. But the fact that the School of Hope, we saw increases on empathy and pro-social behaviour suggests that actually it's had a focused impact on behaviours that are directed towards other people. So how you empathize with others, how you might be helping other people. So I think the fact that it wasn't a generalized, you had a great time, you're feeling better about yourself, is actually really, really interesting and really encouraging in relation to what sort of the School of Hope is really all about. So just to summarize the 3 key findings, kind of taken all together, we saw increases in empathy and pro-social behaviour, which, given the relatively small sample, is really exciting finding to have gotten. Civic participation and mental well-being didn't increase, but as we say, the civic participation may be something that you yourselves will observe in yourselves as time goes on, that the window might have been a bit narrow for us to see that kind of in the data immediately. And just that overall reflecting that increases we're seeing in behaviours that focus on our relationships with other people as opposed to our relationship with ourselves. Not to say that, of course, well-being isn't important, but I think it's a really interesting outcome to have from this. So this leaves us with a really, really encouraging insight that the School of Hope has had a positive impact on empathy and pro-social behaviour, which is really exciting for, you know, future directions, future initiatives. So yeah, as I say, I was delighted to be a part of it alongside Laura, and I'll now pass you back to Katie. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. You had the honour of the first technical difficulties as well, so thank you so much for that.
I'm so sorry for that.
It's fine, no worries. Thanks so much, Deirdre. We'll see you again in a sec. So just to say, we will be having a very short Q&A after our next section too. So if you do have any questions about what we're talking about, pop them in the Q&A function, which is somewhere down there, and we'll hopefully answer some of your questions. As a reminder, I've just taken a peek at our Instagram Live, and Julia is doing a beautiful illustration of everything that we're talking about. So if you haven't had a chance yet, do take a look. She's only doing her illustration in this section, so do take a look if you haven't yet. Moving swiftly on, I'm now going to hand over to Don Pralea, who is a 3rd year student studying psychology at Anglia Ruskin, and Don got involved in the School of Hope after John, who you'll meet in a minute, asked Don to do the very commendable task of transcribing some of these interviews that we did with our brilliant young creatives. And now we're really pleased to have Don here with us to present the actual findings of the qualitative process and the results. So over to you, Don.
Yeah, I'm me, Don. Just a quick description of myself. I'm white, have brown short hair, I'm wearing a black t-shirt, and in the background you can see a poster and some towels hanging by the wardrobe. So let me just quickly screen share my, can't seem to find it. Wait a second. So, you didn't only take part in the questionnaires that Deirdre was talking about, but in some interviews also. And I'm here to summarize what we found in these interviews and present some quotes, which are your own, But don't worry, we didn't add any names to them, so everything is anonymous. Next slide, please. There were in total 31 of you who took part in the focus group interviews. 7 art groups in total, and it's amazing that there were 3 continents involved in the interviews. Next slide. Thank you. From the questionnaire data, we found that your empathy and levels of helping behavior actually increased after doing School of Hope, which is very good. And our interview data further uncovers some themes relating to your feelings of social connection and personal growth. And there's also some gained insight into the emotions associated with this. Next slide, please. The 5 themes are safe space, my voice, connections, a new understanding of empathy, and personal growth. Next slide, please. The first theme is safe space. And lots of you felt that the School of Hope was a safe space to express yourselves and to become more creative. Next slide, please. And this safety helped you become more daring, and you weren't afraid of going out of your safe space and experimenting, and you didn't feel like you were afraid of failure after the experimentation. Next slide, please. One interesting thing about this is there is an irony to safe space because they allow you to become more confident enough to leave that safe space. And in this quote, there is the expression taken out of our comfort zones. This irony, though, is not a contradiction. There is actually in psychology, in attachment theory, a secure base, which is a place that allows you to be confident enough to leave and then return to that secure base or safe space. Next slide, please. The second theme, my voice. All of you felt like you had a voice, and many of you said that you were confident enough to express yourself. But this feeling of confidence doesn't involve only expressing emotions or feelings, but it also has to do with feeling like you are being listened to when you are expressing yourself. Next slide, please. And of course, having a voice also means that you are doing something with that voice. As one of you said in this quote, you might want to take action or change things. Next slide, please. Some of you that are based in Canada felt that you had the opportunity to raise awareness about the terrible injustices happening there. Next slide, please. Connections, which is our third theme. After taking part in School of Hope, you felt that your connections got deeper, connections to the other people taking part in the groups, in the School of Hope or with other people. Next slide, please. In lockdown, you and other people and myself might have become more insular. However, School of Hope was a really great way of increasing social connections and interactions. Once again, next slide, please. And these connections and bonds might also lead to feelings of collective empowerment. that the feeling that you can work together to achieve something. Next slide, please. The fourth theme, which is a new understanding of empathy. You guys, in the interviews, you talked a lot about empathy and what it means to be empathetic, and or how to practice it in a good way. Next slide, please. One thing that I found was really eye-opening for me, even while doing the transcripts, was that the limit to empathy came up, and how being overexposed to it, or like trying to be empathetic to everyone or everyone's problems, can become exhausting. But you also talked about how terrible the world would be without it, without empathy. Next slide, please. And one of you also said that empathy is really important when creating art. The best art comes from empathy. Next slide, please. And also, social media is a major issue when expressing empathy. In the interviews, the topic that whether or not you can express empathy in an authentic way on social media is possible. Next slide, please. And lastly, the last theme, personal growth. I think one of the best things that came from this project, from School of Hope, was that so many of you increased your confidence. Next slide, please. And this project actually enabled you to become more creative and artistic. Next slide, please. And it also helped you be more reflexive towards yourself or towards other people. Next slide, please. Which actually led into a better understanding of yourself, which is at the end of the day what we really want. Next slide, please. And to close up with, there is this one big quote that I feel illustrates all the themes very well. Themes of social connections and safety and personal growth. And it shows that all of you in your groups came together and to work in an effective way, which actually helped you become more bonded. You bonded as a collective force. And also, I think it illustrates how the changes in terms of empathy and well-being and social engagement that you identify, that we identify in the questionnaires, it helps actually show how it played out in real life and how these changes were experienced and felt by all of you. And I'm going to actually read this quote. As a collective, as a core, we definitely all have grown. Emotionally, we've matured around each other, which has allowed each of us to be safe. I cried yesterday in front of everybody, and then I don't cry in front of people. But the School of Hope has kind of allowed me to accept when I'm hurt and when I'm okay. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dom. That last quote is just so emotive. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'd now like to invite back Deirdre and Don, if you want to come back in as well, and also invite John Lammy and Katrina Brown to the Zoom, who are two of our lead academics for the project. So if you'd like to join us on screen. Hello. We don't have too much time, so we've got a couple of minutes just to have a few thoughts. So I'll start off maybe with, we have one question come in. Hopefully Kate will join us in a second. One question from Lauren, thank you very much, Lauren, who has asked, have these findings on impact been replicated in other similar projects that you know of? Just maybe John, would you like to start off with with that, hello, John.
Hello, hello. Should I describe myself?
If you can, yes, please.
Yes, I'm John Lambie. I'm a 53-year-old white male wearing glasses and a black jumper. And yes, the question, I think that there are similar, I know that there are some similar studies kind of in school settings, you know, where people are trained on empathy, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot that we found actually that was done with art. So I think people I think there's research where people go in and like teach people with you know, a training course or something about empathy, but I couldn't find anything where someone had done like an art project like this and had done it in this way. So I do think these are sort of unique findings. Actually, it's a new exciting thing to see changes in empathy coming out of an art project.
Brilliant. And Kate, do you have anything to add?
Hi there, thank you very much. I'm Katrina Brown, known as Kate. I'm a white woman. I'm 60 years old and I'm sitting in a small room in an attic in Exeter in the southwest of England, and I'm wearing a turquoise jumper. I'd just like to add very briefly, I completely agree with what John said, but I also think what was very interesting about this work, and thank you so much, all the people that took part in the interviews. It was such a fantastic experience, certainly for me. But I think it was so interesting because of the timing and coming out of, or, you know, being at this stage in a global pandemic. I think that actually that made these findings, you know, really special, actually. And I think the insights particularly important. And, you know, as Don highlighted, we were able to talk across 3 different continents and the amazing diversity of settings. So I think that's also really made them very interesting and very important.
Fantastic. I'm going to very, very quickly ask one more question that's come in from the audience. So maybe all 4 of you would like to give an answer in a very small nutshell. From Xander, I think hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Where do you want to take what you have found next? Which is a really nice question to end on. So where would you like to take your findings next, either in your academic career, or where would you like to see the Young Creatives go? Deirdre, do you maybe want to kick us off? Not to throw you in.
No, sure. I think, I mean, yeah, it's a really good question. I think the findings are so exciting for where a project like the School of Hope could go, who it could reach, how it could impact. So I think I'd love to see more of it, more of these kind of projects rolling out, you know, across different countries. And I think as a part of that, it could be an, you know, ongoing research alongside it as well. So yeah, my aim, or what I would love to see, would just it continuing reaching as many young creatives as possible.
Fab. And Don, any thoughts? Where would you like to see this go?
I think the findings just showed how much you can do when you actually want to change people. Like this was a project, obviously, but if you wanted to do an intervention about increasing people's empathy, it just shows how you can actually succeed if you try, and how people actually want to change for the better. Because I don't think anything like the behavior, like confidence or empathy, would have increased if the students taking part in the project didn't want to also. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's good to see that there is hope.
Agreed, very much agreed. And we're so tight on time. I'm so sorry, John and Kate, to sort of squish you together, but any final words on what you'd like to say about anything to do with the impact findings or that question?
I'd like to say two things really quickly, please. This is Kate. Firstly, to say, I think what's really exciting that we can do very quickly is to bring together the quantitative results and the qualitative results, because I think they kind of talk to each other really nicely and give us real sort of insights into the emotional impacts that the School of Hope had on the participants. And secondly, of course, you know, all of us want to know what happens next. And so we'd really like to kind of know, well, are these feelings sustained and how does it, or does it translate into action?
Brilliant. And John, any final words?
I don't know if I can add anything to that. I mean, I found the whole thing very moving to read what everyone had said and to hear things in the interview, and I was very inspired by how sort of you know, how well everyone engaged with it, and how sort of confident people seem to be, and it certainly gave me hope for the future. You know, I think the younger generation are the people that I have hope in, and hopefully they can kind of sort out the mess that the older people left the planet in. But yes, so I'll end on that really. I think it's you know, great to kind of see that there is hope in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all four of you for joining us. It's been such a great process, and yeah, we're very grateful for all your hard work on the project. So yeah, we're all gonna say goodbye now, but if you're watching, you should stick around, because up next we have the world premiere, I love saying the words world premiere, of A Call for Radical Empathy, which is our second film commissioned by the School of Hope. Thank you very much.